Good evening. My name is Devonne Adanna, and I am pleased to invite you to Tobago CivilNet's town hall meeting on navigating the pandemic. We have an amazing panel for you tonight. What we're going to do is I'm going to read a little disclaimer before we continue. Good evening, everyone. My name is Devonne Adanna, and I'm pleased to be hosting the Tobago CivilNet's town hall meeting on navigating the pandemic. This evening, we have a really rousing set of panelists who I believe are going to give us some really deep insight into not only how we should be navigating the pandemic as individuals, but also as an island and probably even the world. This evening, I'll start off by reading one quick announcement and a disclaimer, and then we will move forward. Today, we are talking with you, the public, in an open town hall meeting with a panel of experts and social groups. Everyone is invited to join the virtual call. Gentle reminder that the Tobago CivilNet is a non-partisan group of Tobago civil society, organizations, and concerned citizens, all combining forces for the purpose of having collective input on Tobago's development. Tobago CivilNet extends an invitation to all persons and organizations interested in lending their voices to these discussions. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, and you are invited to join the town hall meeting via Facebook as well on Tobago CivilNet's Facebook page. And before I introduce the panelists, I just want to remind everyone that the views and opinions expressed by all panelists of this Tobago CivilNet forum do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Tobago CivilNet, its directors, officers, nor members. Any errors, false facts, or seemingly controversial opinions and views remains the responsibility of that participant. Before we get into the panelists, I want to reintroduce myself. My name is Devonne Adanna. I am an attorney at law for the past 7 years. I'm also a content creator and a Tobago enthusiast. I am pleased to be your host and moderator this evening. And now we'll get right into introducing our panelists. First up, we have Dr. Maxwell Adeyemi, family physician and diabetologist. Dr. Adeyemi received medical and related training at the University of Lagos in Nigeria, the University of the West Indies, the Universities of Cardiff and Roehampton in the UK, and Harvard University in the US. He has practiced medicine in Tobago for many years and also contributes towards medical peer-reviewed research in international medical journals. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Adeyemi. Also have Miss Billy Sterling Lewis, counselor and psychologist with us. Mrs. Sterling Lewis is a counseling psychologist with over 14 years experience. She has a master's of psychology in counseling, psychology, and another postgraduate degree in loss, grief, and trauma. She is the founder and managing director of MPAC Counseling Consultancy Services, and is passionate about holistic health, wellness, and behavior change. Mrs. Sterling Lewis is an enthusiastic helper, educator, author, and change leader. Thank you so much for being part of the panel, Mrs. Lewis. We also have Mr. Hiru Ofori Atta, founder of Herbal Results Industries. Mr. Ofori Atta has a Bachelor's of Science degree in biology and psychology from Tufts University and a Juris Doctor from Northeastern University School of Law in the USA. Hiru Ofori Atta is the founder of Herbal Results Industries, where his company formulates, manufactures, and distributes natural health products, Herbal Results Industries has achieved success in reversing a wide range of serious illnesses, including high blood pressure, high blood sugar, prostate cancer, breast tumors, fibroids, epileptic seizures, kidney failure, herpes, eczema, and more. Hiru is a researcher and public intellectual who routinely engages in lectures and interviews worldwide. Welcome, Mr. Hiru Ofori-Atta. We're pleased to have you. Ms. Joanne John, communication specialist and life coach. Joanne John recently relocated to Tobago after growing up in Ottawa, Canada. She is a former Government of Canada senior executive who now works as a consultant specializing in the areas of communications, leadership, and management training. She is a certified career and life coach. Joanne John is also the owner-operator of The Whining Goat, a wine and tapas bar located in Crown Point, Tobago. Welcome, Ms. John. Happy to have you on the panel this evening. So we are going to see how in as much as possible, we're going to try to facilitate as many of the questions that are coming in from Facebook as possible. This evening, we want to start off asking a question of our medical professional, Dr. Adeyemi. Is living with COVID our new normal? Please, your mic, please, Dr. Adeyemi.
Hello, good evening. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
All right. Good evening, audience, and good evening, panel. Good evening, everyone. Well, the question says, is it that we have to live with COVID? Is it a new normal? Yeah? The answer is yes. We have to live with the virus because this virus is not going away in a hurry. It's been with us for 2 years, and we're still not too sure how much more, what will happen in terms of having it controlled, having it eradicated, having it under control. We don't know because the informations are dynamic, they keep changing, new informations are coming. We're a lot better off than we started 2 years ago. But yes, I believe that we have to learn to live with the virus. So the earlier we get the message, the better. We have to live with it.
And, I love that you use the word dynamic, because I think one of the most dynamic areas right now is the issue of vaccination. And I actually want to pose this question to all of the panelists. I'd love to give the audience a flavor of each, even your individual take, which is, why do you think the vaccination rate, the COVID vaccination rate in Tobago is so low? Dr. Adeyemi, as your mic is on, we could start with you, and then Ms. Joanna, we'll go to you.
I think the vaccine hesitancy, which has always been a problem, is not only with COVID vaccine alone. There are quite a lot of vaccine in the past that have experienced it. Not too long ago, we had the issue of the HPV, where, people were against the HPV vaccine. So vaccine hesitancy is a constant fact of life in the medical world. However, with particular attention to COVID, there have been quite a lot of, informations, disinformations, conspiracy theories and religious, I don't want to call it brainwashing or whatever, but there have been quite a lot of factors that are responsible for that. Also, I think the education and the campaign, on the part of the health professional and on the part of the government could have been a little bit more robust, a little more earlier put out there before all the conspiracy theories start confusing people's mind, and we had quite a lot of Facebook doctors and professors who really just keep churning out, conspiracy theories and all sort of conflicting information that are out there. So the education level, the religious aspects, the people's beliefs and people's willpower, and just quite a lot of reasons why that is low at this point in time. And the fact that even with the authorities on COVID, we do have instances in which the dynamics of the information keep changing and they're shifting and here and there about some of the facts that are being given out. And that is, so because in a new virus like this, you're going to have a lot of information that, new research will dispel and some other shifting that will take place until we get to some level of equilibrium where we can be comfortable with what is going on. A lot of people are not comfortable with what is happening. You can't, fault them for that. The decisions has to be individualized in terms of making a choice to take or not to take, However, I think because of the disinformation that is taking place, a lot of people are on the edge in terms of vaccine, hesitancy.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very a nice broad picture of exactly what's happening. Miss John, do you have any contribution to that? Why do you think the COVID vaccination rate in Tobago is so low, especially say East Tobago versus West Tobago?
I don't know that I would be in a position to answer why East Tobago versus West, but what I can say is that I think that vaccine hesitancy, I agree with everything the doctor has said, but I also think that if you look at it, various jurisdictions, I'm very familiar with what has occurred in the Canadian context in terms of vaccination rates and hesitancy. The vaccination rate there is now, I think, somewhere in the 90s. 90% of the population has been vaccinated. In the city that I come from, it's way up there in the 90s. Now, other parts of Canada, the vaccination rate still isn't as high. And so then when you look at, well, what has contributed to that one area versus another, you will find that some of the things that the doctor has just said come into play. We do have a sort of a Bible Belt in Canada. And in the Bible Belt, the vaccination hesitancy is higher because there is more, as he was saying, more sort of adherence to guidance that might come from faith leaders and more of that, right? And maybe some more hesitancy within those communities. You also have what I've discovered as well is that depending on where you are in the country, where there might be higher levels of what we call people of color, people who come from other countries where the trust in governments and the trust in authorities might be less. So when it comes to taking a vaccine, if you don't have a high trust in your government or you don't have a high trust in authorities, you as a community, you might say, well, we've had bad experiences where we come from in our other countries, and where we didn't trust governments to have our best interests at heart. So now, this government here in Canada is telling us we should take this vaccine. We want to wait. We want to see how it plays out before we sign up for it. But one of the things that we don't have an issue with, and I do think really contributes here, and certainly the doctor mentioned it, is the incredible amount of the proliferation, let's say, of misinformation on WhatsApp. I think that has really contributed to causing people to believe things that are not really accurate. And what I would like to see maybe is a way in which to educate people about how to navigate these social media platforms and see when something is a fake news, what should you actually look for? Because that's something that where I come from, we don't have WhatsApp. So nobody could send out conspiracy theories on that. But in the beginning, there were conspiracy theories popping up on Facebook and whatnot. And so, but there was a lot of backlash from other users saying, look, check this. This is an article that was written, 25 years ago, or check this and see that this is a video that's obviously been coupled together from a bunch of, misinformation that has been put together to make a video. And then eventually all of that dissipated. So we didn't have to deal with that level of the conspiracy theory. Not to say that it didn't happen in other areas, but I think, stuff like that really, really did contribute.
I appreciate you including the social media aspect, because that's a very important aspect, given that we are all, living in the, parallelogram that is the pandemic. And, and it's the only form of communication that many of us will have with, with the outside world. So very good point that you're raising there. Mrs. Sterling, I would love to know your hot take. Could you share with us, why do you think the COVID vaccination rates in Tobago are so low?
Sure. Again, like the speaker before me just said, I'm not sure I can speak directly to why it's so low in Tobago, authoritatively, but I do know in general there, in addition to what the other two have said, those two speakers have said, there is a genuine level of fear. The fear has gone along with what was just said about the mistrust. And the mistrust is not just in the American space or the Canadian space or the European space or in the, black versus white or stuff in the metropolitan areas, but we do have a high level of mistrust here. That comes from that as well, comes from those larger countries. And that fear has fueled, of course, as we can understand, a lot of anxiety. So what has been said before, the misinformation, the miseducation, and then, like Doc said in the beginning, that inability for people to feel comfortable with the constantly changing information that we receive from the medical front. Because sometimes I myself am a little bit frustrated with it, but I do understand that it is something that they are dealing with for at least the first time in the COVID-19 aspect of it. They've always had corona, but this particular strain is something that, is new. So they're learning it as they go along. And so that heightened level of fear and anxiety that feeds into other issues that maybe already exist. And of course, because I'm a mental health worker, I always factor that in. And then that spiritual aspect cannot be ignored. I know some people like to beat people for it or undermine them or praise them for it. It has such a significant impact because we are primarily people of faith, even if our role is just to deny the faith. There's always something about the spiritual aspect of our lives. And so for me, that is what has really, in addition to what I've said already, I wouldn't repeat what has been said already. That has really fed into it. But I guess you'll come to it, but eventually for me, it is what is it that is doing to the persons, that level of fear, that level of anxiety, that level of mistrust. What is it doing? I think that is where some of the biggest issues lie, as well as just the hesitancy to take the vaccine.
Appreciate your contribution. Mr. Ofori Atta, could you give us your hot take? Why do you think COVID vaccination rates are so low in Tobago?
Well, to have this conversation, there has to be a lot of foundational issues that are really dealt with on a very serious level. Many of the answers that I heard from the panelists here presupposes that the vaccines are what they're purported to be based on the news reports and the studies. And when it comes to taking vaccines, any vaccines, there are three questions. Is it as effective as advertised? Is it safe? And are there any viable alternatives? Those are the three questions that have to be answered. And they are not answered with press clippings or newspaper stories or media stories. They are answered, number one, with the evaluation of the available scientific studies, looking at the scientific studies and seeing who actually sponsored those scientific studies. Many of the scientific studies that are relied on by governments are actually funded by the drug companies themselves. That needs to be looked at. There's been a complete failure in public education when it comes to health. When a viral pandemic happens, there are three ways to deal with a viral pandemic. And I'll name those three ways. And the worldwide response by those who are in charge of public health, I would give the grade an F-, failing grade. Because when you're talking about a viral pandemic, the three things that are necessary to deal with in a viral pandemic is one, the immune system. How do you build up your immune system and how do you not weaken your immune system? That should have been the first order of business. And what we know about the immune system from studies that have come out is number one, what builds the immune system? The most important vitamin, which is not even a vitamin, it's a hormone for the immune system that we're finding out is vitamin D. There's been no public education around that. There are studies from Indonesia and many parts of the world where they did post-mortem autopsies of people who died of COVID, and they found that 98% of the people who died of COVID were actually vitamin D deficient. All those studies are available for people to actually look at. And whenever I speak publicly, I don't want people to believe anything that I'm saying. I like to give people the tools to be able to do the research on their own. We are living in the information age and people have such little information. People have a phone, a smartphone they're not using very smartly. They have an opportunity to access the world's library and get this information. So number one, there should have been a public education around vitamin D. Number two, there should be a public information and education about the things that actually lower a person's immune system. And what we know that lowers an immune system is inflammatory foods. The most vicious food that lowers the immune system is actually sugar. So when you're having a viral pandemic, there has to be a public education about the immune system. That's number one, what people can do to help themselves. Number two, when we're talking about a viral pandemic, you're talking about a virus. And so we have to know that when we're dealing with an RNA virus, we have to understand its mechanism of action and how it actually replicates. So one of the things that you would do is find what actually stops the replication of an RNA virus. And when it comes to the coronavirus, which the COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV-2 virus is in a family of coronaviruses, they all replicate the same way. And they use a mechanism, an intracellular mechanism called an RNA polymerase. RNA polymerase should have been taught to every 10-year-old child and how it replicates. And it turns out that zinc stops RNA polymerase from replicating the virus intracellularly. But the problem is that zinc has two positive ionic charges that keeps zinc from actually entering the cell because of the polarity of the cell. But there are actually compounds that will aid and assist zinc from getting into the cell, which is called zinc ionophores. And there's a whole list of zinc ionophores. There's natural zinc ionophores. There is olive leaf extract. There's green tea extract. I have a whole list. I've done lectures on this. If people wanted to get the information, they get it. And the third thing would be a vaccine. But we just waited for the vaccines, All these people died, and there was no public education around the immune system, building the immune system, not ruining your immune system through diet, zinc ionophores and zinc. We went straight to the vaccines as if they are the end all be all. And when we start looking at the data, the actual scientific data coming out of Israel and coming out of the UK, we're seeing that these vaccines are not as they have been advertised in terms of efficacy. We're seeing them starting to wane off between 3 and 4 months. That's why they're talking about booster shots. Now, I don't want to go too long about this, but I just wanted to give you my foundational platform as to—
I want to make sure we're giving our audience an opportunity to join in. I just wanted to remind you guys that this is a public and open town hall meeting with a panel of experts and social groups. Everyone is invited to join the virtual call. Gentle reminder, Tobago CivilNet is a non-partisan group of Tobago civil society organizations and concerned citizens, all combining forces for the purpose of having collective input on Tobago's development. Tobago CivilNet extends this invitation to all persons and organizations interested in lending their voices to these discussions. Please feel free to follow Tobago CivilNet on Facebook and send us your questions. The panel is ready to answer. So, Dr. Adeyemi, Mr. Hiru gave us a lot to, digest there. Would you, do you feel that there is, I wouldn't say merit, because I think everybody's contribution has merit, but do you think that what he's saying, that there's a place for that in the pandemic discussion?
Yeah, I mean, he said quite a lot of stuff, and I tend to agree with quite a few of them. Okay. With regard to the immune system, obviously, there are ways where we can boost our immune system, either by food or by lifestyle or by things we do and stuff like that. And that should also be part of the tools that we are presenting to people in terms of, defending themselves against the virus, because the body does have quite a lot of complex mechanisms by which it defends itself, right? So the immune system should be one of the major things. Yes, vaccine is another layer, okay, and it's not that too much emphasis is being, placed on vaccine. Vaccines are very important, but I think over the time, as you said, there would have been a little bit more emphasis in certain quarters towards, the vaccination. I think, I mean, like I say, vaccine is very important, but we also tend to also want to forget about all the other basic things that we have been endowed with as human beings to be able to flourish and live well. Even the health protocols are also important. And so people get vaccinated and then they forget or they ignore the health protocols. They say, okay, I'm vaccinated, and so you can ignore social distancing, and you can ignore face masks, and you can ignore hand washing. It shouldn't be like that. Each approach that we use for the preventive measures should be another layer of protection, so that the health protocol is one, the immune system is another, the vaccine is another, and obviously as time goes on, maybe we may be able to discover a tablet or some other medications which may form another layer of protection that we may need to use. And hopefully we also possibly, our faith and prayer will also help us to defeat the virus, or God will take it away.
And thank you so much for your contribution, Dr. Adeyemi. Now, I know that vaccination could be a very polarizing topic. So let's move a little bit away from that and talk a bit about the reopening process. Mrs. Sterling Lewis, I want to ask you, do you think that the reopening process has been adequate in managing the immense negative social, economic, and health fallout from the pandemic? And do you think anything needs to be changed?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I smiled when everybody was sharing, because it's such a dynamic and diverse panel. And I think we're all adding to an answer to that question. So we are still opening. It's a continuous thing. We haven't opened yet. I am still very frustrated that nobody seems to understand the value of the beach. I cannot understand how they have the beach closed so long. There's no scientific, spiritual, logical reason to keep the beach closed. So that's a different story. Probably it isn't. But I do think that we do have some failings or shortcomings. I'm trying not to be so harsh with it, but there's some setbacks where we are in terms of opening well, because we have to understand the way we shut down. We were shut down. I mean, I'm a social butterfly, even if it's by myself. So I like outside in my yard. And at least I got to go out. I got my children out, but you couldn't go out. We have my last child, we laugh at him every time. The poor child doesn't even understand, he's a joke. I said, but you have no friends, you have no school, you have no friends. We were shut down. We couldn't interact. You had to withhold the power of touch. This skin here, so not only to protect us from heat and whatever, this skin is to bring touch and the power of touch into our brains. We couldn't touch. People lost income. People lost their minds. People lost their relationships. People lost their properties. And so I think we have to be I know there was some committee set up, but we have to be very mindful and wise about how we reopen, how we do this reopening process, because just reopening a supermarket or reopening the school or just going back to something is not going to be opening for everybody, because there's so much that's still shut down. A lot of things came to a grinding halt. And in terms of what Heru, I hope, let me just say Atta. Can I call you Atta, sir? Afori Atta. I don't want to, I'm big into names. I like to pronounce and spell people's names correctly.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Heru, or, Heru is fine. Yeah, that's
Heru.
fine.
Good. I just want to make sure the pronunciation correct. Yeah. I do love what he said, because that's the belief that I hold where that is concerned. And I think part of opening up, Dr. Maxwell also pointed to that. We cannot just go back. There's no going back to the way we were if we expect to survive something else like this. If we miss the lessons of COVID 2020, 2021, then we're going to lose a lot for generations to come. And part of it, in terms of opening, has to get us to the place where we are addressing those mental health issues, addressing those socioeconomic issues, because they're so much interconnected, and addressing holistic health. Now, I'm a psychologist, but I practice from the holistic level. And so if we don't understand the value of these things, we will reopen, but we will allow ourselves or force ourselves to have to shut down eventually because of not dealing with them properly. I want to go on. Go ahead.
I want to make sure we're including Ms. John in this discussion, especially from the perspective of, a business owner. Ms. John, tell me, what do you think about employers mandating vaccinations, and given that workers and employers need to work together in this pandemic? What do you think about mandatory vaccination? Yes, we're going back a little bit onto that topic, but from a different perspective.
Yeah, I think the perspective is then, the whole notion of the safe zones that have been created, and that businesses such as mine, which is a wine bar, would be allowed to open once it's a designated safe zone, and both employer and employee are vaccinated. Me personally, I don't have an issue with that. I feel that, well, the main reason is because my business is very much geared toward, tourists. So if tourists come from Trinidad, or if tourists come from, domestic tourists come from Trinidad, or tourists come from foreign, then they're coming in vaccinated. They're going to have an expectation that they're going to be among vaccinated people. So for my business, I have no problem with saying mine is a safe zone, and when you come here, you will be certain that you're among vaccinated people. And ergo, it's going to lower the possibility that you might become more vulnerable to COVID. I have lived through. I said I was on Tobago morning show the other day, and I said I should be a poster child for COVID, because I have traveled twice during the COVID pandemic. I've gone through 5 PCR tests. I've been quarantined 3 times. I have had, I don't know, like numerous challenges because of COVID in order to be able to go to Canada, see my children, and return. I have gone when Canada was still in a world of hurt when it came to numbers being really high, and all of the issues, and things couldn't be opened up. They were shut down. You had, there were various lockdowns and the whole thing. But it has now moved to a state whereby everything is open, and things have been opened up gradually based on the number of vaccinated people. That has been the only equation. And so it's an equation that makes sense to me. If you want your country to be opened up in such a way that people can move freely and get back to any sense of normalcy, it is contingent on rising numbers of vaccinated people within your communities. The people who are still having problems in Canada are the unvaccinated, who are still in the ICU and who are still dying. Canada has 38 million people. Not one person has died from taking the COVID-19 vaccine. Not one. They have died from comorbidities that contributed to their deaths even after they took the vaccine. But no one has there's been no direct correlation between the vaccine and deaths. And so that's a message that Canadians have absorbed. And so therefore it is one that has driven people to become seriously vaccinated, to the point that I mentioned before, that most of the population is fully vaccinated, and has allowed us all to go back to a state where we can be sort of normal. That doesn't mean the numbers won't go up, and anybody would be kind of, you would be dreaming in Technicolor if you thought that would stop the numbers from going up. They will go up, but people will not die, and they will not be taking up ICU beds from people who require them for other reasons.
I just want to make sure that I am reading our disclaimer. Thank you so much for that, Miss John. The views and opinions expressed by all participants of this Tobago CivilNet forum do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Tobago CivilNet, its directors, officers, nor members. Any errors, false facts, or seemingly controversial opinions and views remains the responsibility of the participants. So Dr. Hiru, Mr. Hiru, I'm gonna bring you in here. I want to kind of touch a little bit more on personal health care. You talked a little bit about vitamin D. Are there, maybe 3 things, or maybe even a way to get more vitamin D that you would suggest to our listeners and our audience here? Well, how do you think personal health care, what should we be doing to protect ourselves and build our immunity?
Well, I mean, this panel is a very interesting panel, and myself and Ms. John are diametrically opposed. I don't agree with any of the information that she has said. It's not supported by any of the studies or the facts that I have. As a matter of fact, these conversations are good. They're good because people can state their opinions, and then you can back it up with evidence, right? Because I personally am aware of 10 people who died from taking the vaccine, personally. My own sister almost died from taking the vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. This is not like something that people are making up. And so the way that you can check out, it doesn't have to be about opinions or anecdotal. I'm an educator, so where people can go and confirm this is the World Health Organization has a website where they track adverse reactions and adverse events from all medications in the world. And that website is vgiaccess.org. I would ask everyone to just go to that website. And on that website, you can put in any medication you want, plus any vaccines that you want. And if I could even do a screen share, I could show people right now, because me and Mrs. John can just go back and forth and we can talk about our opinions, but we have to be able to back that up with evidence. And that's the only thing that I care about, is evidence and scientific studies, not press releases and not what people say. And there's a chance that I could be wrong. I'm not infallible, but I back up everything that I'm saying. So if you go to vgiaccess.org, any questions that you ask me from this point forward, and I know that we're pressed for time, and I don't want to take all the time, but I want to be able to do screen share so people can actually confirm what I'm saying or find out what I'm saying is wrong. That's the only thing that matters, is that people need public education. They need to be able to do the research on their own so that they can make their own decisions. So,
yes. Well, I would love it if you would share with us from an immune system perspective or a personal health care perspective. Educate us. Tell us.
Yeah. So one of the failures in the treatment of COVID is the lack of early treatment. So I can tell you in the United States and many other jurisdictions is that what happens is that someone will get the first symptoms of COVID, which would be a high fever, sore throat, loss of taste and smell. They go to the hospital, and the hospital will give them Tylenol and tell them to go home. And if they are having problems breathing, then they can get back. But by that time, the virus is already replicated. And if your immune system is not strong enough to fight off the viral replication, that's when you go into the third stage of COVID, because COVID has 3 stages. The first stage is the transmission stage, where you get transmitted the virus and the virus quietly replicates in the background. Then the second stage is when you get symptoms, and those symptoms I named already. And the third stage is when you get what you would call a hyperinflammatory lung responses to the virus, which leads to thrombosis or fibrosis or anything that causes you to lose oxygen and breathing, which is really coming from mucal coagulation in the lungs. There's been a failure of treatment. You don't wait for people to get to stage 3 before you actually treat them. And this applies to people who are vaccinated too, because if you look at the studies coming out of Israel and UK, the hospitals are actually full of vaccinated people. This is just fact. This is coming, and I can share the information. Anyone who wants it from me, they can email me at Haru@Herbal Results, and I can give you all the studies. You can look at it. I'd love to have a conversation with Dr. IDME because he treats people and share the information that I have, whether he accepts or not. But it would be good to have that type of a conversation. But the thing that people are supposed to do is at the moment that you start to feel symptoms, loss of taste, loss of smell, sore throat, coughing, fever, I would recommend people to take zinc, at least 50 milligrams of zinc, particularly zinc picolinate. And then you would also take quercetin, which is a zinc ionophore, which is an extract that comes from onions. So quercetin you can take olive leaf extract. There are a bunch of things that people can do for themselves before they would have to go to the hospital. But what has happened is that there's been no public education where people can actually try to help themselves to take the pressure off the hospitals. Taking Tylenol will not help you to stop viral replication.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Ofori-Atta. Dr. Max, I want to include you here in terms of boosting your immune system. So you probably, obviously not prevent, but try to reduce, and maybe particularly bad episode, with COVID or getting it at all. What would you suggest, besides the vaccination, of course, getting your immune system up and strong to fight off, the virus, if you do get it?
Well, like I said before, a very strong immune system is a very, very necessary thing in fighting any disease at all. And especially the viruses that we face. I mean, it's not only COVID-19 virus that we are confronted with, the other viruses that we had before, the influenza, the H1N1, and the other, they are still around. And we still have to fight these viruses on a regular basis. Therefore, it is extremely important that you pay attention to your immune system. And paying attention to your immune system is a function of so many things, depending on your lifestyle, depending on even your sleeping and your resting and the kind of food that you eat to boost your immune system. There are quite a lot of natural food that we have that can boost our immune system, and those are the things that we should be, eating on a regular basis. Also, the vitamins that we help us, the vitamin C and the B17 and the vitamin D and also the zinc, they are important. Quite a lot of my patients that I see who possibly may come with respiratory symptoms or maybe the flu, or I suspect something is going on, I make sure that they are well loaded on these vitamins, and a lot of them are able to fight off whatever virus it is that they're fighting, and some of them end up to be just the normal flu, and some of them may be COVID, okay, but when they are given that fighting chance to boost their immune system, then a lot of them do much, much better. So I will encourage, and I will support the notion of boosting the immune system by whatever means and capacity we can. Even exercising as well also has its role in, boosting the immune system. So there are quite a lot of tools that we have to boost the immune system, and that may help us to fight the virus, not only COVID, but every other virus that we encounter on a regular basis.
All right, Mrs. Sterling Lewis, I want to bring you in, but before I do, I want to remind everyone that this is an open town hall meeting with a panel of experts and social groups. Everyone is invited to join the virtual call. This is a gentle reminder that the Tobago CivilNet is a non-partisan group of Tobago civil society organizations and concerned citizens, all combining forces for the purpose of having collective input on Tobago's development. Tobago CivilNet extends an invitation to all persons and organizations interested in lending their voices to these discussions. Please feel free to follow Tobago CivilNet on Facebook. And if you have a question, feel free, if you are on the call, to raise your hand and let us know. And we want to hear from you. We'd love to hear the audience's take on what the panel is presenting tonight. Mrs. Sterling, Lewis, have you seen a rise in psychological issues, domestic violence, substance abuse, delinquency? You touched a little bit on it before during the pandemic. And if so, what stressors do you think are contributive?
You know, there has definitely been an increase in all those factors that you just raised. There has been an increase in just on a whole gender-based violence. There has been an increase in the use of drugs and alcohol, primarily alcohol and marijuana, of course, the smoking. There has been an increase in the levels on the numbers of mood disorders. So mood disorders speak to our anxiety or depression, both unipolar or bipolar. There has been an increase even in some psychotic issues or breaks because people are just under pressure. And definitely there has been an increase in children, violence against children, because the stresses are so much. Again, remember I mentioned a socioeconomic issue that, or psycho, and I do a lot of psycho-spiritual work, but the socioeconomic is so important as well. People, for instance, let me just take the time to do this. People sometimes wonder about the children, what they have to worry about. Children feed off of their parents' stress. So those parents who lost jobs and were worried about not being able to provide and were not able to provide, the children were carrying the stress. We call them symptom bearers in families, right? And so what is it that has been leading to that? We've all been talking about it here tonight. The actual fear, there's a lot of loss that has gone on and still continues to go on. And of course, I just want to make everybody know, if you don't know already, that loss is not just death. There has been a significant amount of loss that continues to go on and has been going on since the COVID pandemic started. There's a significant amount also in terms of stressors of because of the loss, in terms of loss of income. Again, I'm going back to that. There's also the loss of routine. So people are accustomed to a certain thing. They've built their lives around a particular way of operating, and they're not very adaptable in many ways. And so when they lost that routine, they actually many times plummeted mentally, emotionally. We also have the fear of the symptoms of COVID, the isolation. These things have been really rocking people mentally and emotionally. And so with all of these stressors that I've mentioned, plus the fact that people had pre-existing issues. And we only talk about pre-existing conditions with you know, diabetes and so when people die of COVID, but people had pre-existing mental health issues. Just came out of the Lifestyle Global Summit, and I was sharing with the group at the Caribbean Stage last, and I was saying, you know, we talk about all this misinformation about COVID. Every time you put in the word pandemic or COVID, anything that smells like COVID, a pop-up comes and shows that you're sharing accurate information. And I'm so annoyed because I said for years, we have been sharing inaccurate information about mental health and wellness, and we never had a pop-up. We have benefited from the illness of people as opposed to the wellness. And so people have had pre-existing mental health conditions. The stressors, the depression, the bipolar, I mean, they're there. And so right now we are seeing the breakdown of all these things. I'm talking about from the age group of, let's say, 10, 11, right up. I'm so worried for old people. I love old people. I'm so worried for them, because you can't pass by as much. And so they're dealing with the effects of the loneliness and the isolation, and it affects the mental health. Dr. Maxwell just spoke about the stress. One of the things that breaks down our immune system is stress. And when we're not coping well, it affects us.
I want to make sure that we are including our audience. I'm seeing a question from Mr. Patrick George. I'm going to ask you to please turn on your mic and open your camera if it's possible, turn on your camera to ask the question.
Yes, it may not be possible for the camera, but I would like to ask a question. I heard Ms. Lewis talk about anxiety and, and fear and so on. What effect does that have on the overall health of an individual? Because, we think of anxiety as an abstract thing, and we don't see it affecting probably our health. And also, the lady before was saying that the persons who died, the vaccinated persons that she know who died, they had comorbidities. I find it more than passing strange that these persons were living with their comorbidities all the time. And after the vaccination, they died, and then they say comorbidities. All right. Should we be finding some way to identify comorbidities if that is what's killing them before or sometimes to deal with this? And don't label all the deaths as COVID death, but comorbidities. What you really died from? What was the studies? Do we know?
All right, that sounds like about 3 questions in there, but let's deal with Mrs. Sterling Lewis first, and then I'm actually going to ask Dr. Max to touch on your question a little bit further regarding, how we characterize death. But let's start with Mrs. Sterling Lewis.
Yes, but when it comes to anxiety, what happens is that we have that release in the brain, that cortisol release or stress hormone that we release in the brain, and that suppresses our immune system's ability to fight off diseases and stuff like that. So generally, when anxiety and stress is high in the body, there's a biochemical process that takes place. That's the simplest way I want to put it. That we call it antigens. It suppresses the immune system's ability to fight these off. It makes you more susceptible to getting illnesses or not recovering well from illnesses. And so that is why I always tell clients, stress literally kills. It's not a euphemism. It literally kills because your body breaks down, and the amount of stress we've been having in COVID, it has increased the body's inability to fight the way it should. That's the quickest way I could say it.
And Dr. Max, could you touch in on characterizing the comorbidities, with COVID, or the interaction of the comorbidities and how we label the deaths?
Just a little bit on the stress-related component that my sister was just explaining. Basically, every stressful situation in your life tends to produce what they call stress hormones. And some of the stress hormones, the adrenaline and the cortisol, they have direct impact in subduing and reducing your immune system and your ability to fight illnesses. Therefore, stress is one of the major contributing factor in some of these disease entities. And actually, the fear and the stress that is associated with the pandemic itself also has some devastating effect on people's immune system. Now, the diagnosis itself that yes, you've been diagnosed with COVID, creates some kind of anxiety and panic because of what you've seen happen and what you've read or what you have seen on the TV on a daily basis. So all this create a superstorm of stress within your body that has some serious negative effect on your body and your ability to fight illness and to actually survive, So basically that's it. So stress is a very, very dangerous thing, and we have to learn to manage it much better, or help people to manage their stress level better. In terms of the characterization of death and COVID, now we do know that if you have comorbidity, especially diabetes or hypertension, it actually increases your risk of negative outcomes, right? Not that these conditions, increases your risk of contracting the disease. But if you contract the disease with these medical conditions, then you have a very high risk of having very bad outcome. Now, personally, too, I have not seen nor experienced anyone who has taken the vaccine and eventually died of the vaccine. I don't know of any. and I'm not going to support the notion that there are. The information out there is that the vaccine does not increase your morbidity, but actually enhances your ability to fight disease. However, things happen, okay, and a lot of informations are there that people will have used to, advance their arguments. I have seen a situation in which a guy was supposed to take a vaccine. He was fourth in the line to go into the vaccine room to take a vaccine in another country. And 4 people were in front of him, and suddenly he collapsed, and they rushed him to the hospital, and he died. If he had taken the vaccine, there was no way that anybody would convince anybody there that it's not the vaccine that killed him. But maybe the event was built to happen anyway. I'm not trying to to just make it or to just commonize everything and make it to explain that away. But sometimes situations do happen and people present those information in a way to advance a particular argument that, okay, it is the vaccine that killed them. I do not support such notion. But I'm not saying that every death is COVID. Because I have also seen situations in which, look, this person looking very like COVID, and at the end of the day, they did COVID and the person was negative. I mean, after death, I'm talking, they actually did a COVID testing before they did the autopsy, and the COVID became negative. Therefore, it's not COVID that killed the person. However, if that is not properly, investigated or done, people will have said, okay, well, it is COVID. So it's a very difficult situation to say exactly that if all the deaths that we are hearing is actually as a result of COVID. I cannot beat my chest and say, yes, that is true, because we have no scientific basis to actually argue that. I mean, in the beginning, they were not actually doing autopsies for people who have COVID and you die. I don't think they were doing autopsy at that point in time. And even autopsy being done right now, we still have to be carefully done because obviously the people who are doing it will be exposed and be at risk of developing, COVID. So it is difficult to, really pinpoint and say categorically, okay, these deaths, all the amount of death that is happening, okay, is because of COVID. Some of them might have been aggravated by COVID. And some of the adverse effects of COVID, could have complicated some of the problems that they have before. And some of the problems they have before, like the chronic diseases, obviously will make COVID infection much worse, especially diabetes. When you have diabetes, your glucose control and all the other, inflammatory situation that takes place, really everything goes haywire and off the mark. And therefore, that reduces your risk of being able to fight the disease itself and be able to survive. So we're in a very uncharted, controversial kind of, thing, and I don't want to really, dig too much into it, and create more confusion for people. But COVID is real, and the comorbidities are real, and they do aggravate your response to COVID.
Thank you so much, Dr. Max. I want to invite Ms. Shirley Cook. She had her hand raised. I would appreciate, Ms. Cook, if you could turn on your mic and your camera if possible and share your question, please.
Good night, everyone. Thank you, thanks for having me pose my question. Considering that the topic is navigating the pandemic, I love this panel. It's a very dynamic panel. But I want us to consider something in the fact that we're about to have an election. And what this pandemic has proven to us is the fact that our healthcare delivery system has to be revamped, reviewed, and to be adaptable to any future pandemics. With that said, we have a population that has a predisposition to diabetes and hypertension, which is the two main comorbidities that we talk about with respect to COVID. In that regard, we would like to have a new administration who focuses on preventative medicine or preventative healthcare for a population that is so prone to these kind of non-communicable diseases. Since we're navigating this pandemic, what can we propose to the new administration on what we could do as a society to lessen the amount of comorbidities that we face, particularly with respect to diabetes and hypertension? And if we can start a program in the schools, because my opinion is that even our school feeding program are predisposing our children and our society to these type of NCDs for which we have a very high healthcare bill to take care of. So in terms of navigating the pandemic, I would like our panelists to address how we can, as a people, particularly in Tobago, direct our healthcare directorate to address the issues of health in a more holistic way, to address the health and well-being of our citizens.
Mr. Ofori Atta, I would like to ask for your input, and then Ms. John, I would also like to hear from you as well. But Ms. Atta, we're getting closer in time, so I'd like to ask that you limit it to 3 minutes, please, if that's possible.
Yeah, sure. Health doesn't start overnight, right? Health is systemic, and it's based on habits, the totality of one's habits. And so then, therefore, people should be taught what is healthy behavior, what is healthy foods, what is not healthy foods. We find out that the base problem when it comes to diabetes, when it comes to high blood pressure, when it comes to cancer, they're all metabolic disorders. And what feeds these metabolic disorders, causing insulin resistance, typically is high glycemic index foods, inflammatory foods, foods that cause inflammatory responses. These are the refined sugars, the refined flours, the soda drinks, the high sugar foods or the high sugar forming foods in the body, particularly the refined and processed foods. When we start looking at these statistics, COVID isn't even close to killing as many people as heart disease. COVID isn't as close as killing as many people as diabetes worldwide. So if people were really interested in the numbers, this would be something that would be attacked and be educated in schools. On the prior question, I do agree with the panel about the comorbidities. In the United States, they say over 700,000 people have passed away from COVID. And I have the data that shows that less than 600 people died with no comorbidities. So out of 700,000 people who died, 600 people died with no comorbidities. And the highest amount, the percentage of people who died with comorbidities are people who had 2 or more comorbidities. And those typically would be high blood pressure and diabetes. And most of the people listening over 40 years old either know somebody or they themselves are dealing with high blood pressure and they're dealing with diabetes. And this could be solved with dietary changes and dietary education very, very easily. Within 30 days, I work with people changing their diet to high glycemic foods, natural foods, foods that don't convert into simple sugars in the body. You can take your blood sugar down. You can take your blood pressure down by having an anti-inflammatory diet and taking anti-inflammatory herbs. It's actually, I'm talking about type 2 diabetes, not type 1, but type 2, which is adult onset, is strictly a metabolic disorder based on diet and the development of insulin resistance, causing a weakened immune system.
Thank you, Mr. Atta. Ms. John, you wanted to touch in on Ms. Cook's question?
Yes, I do. And I'm trying to take away this hand, but I'm not successful yet, but I will in a sec. I'll figure it out in a sec. Okay, oh, there we go. Okay, yes, I do definitely want to address this because I think that, yes, you can, it's kind of, are you going to address the symptom or the the cause, or you were going to address the end result. And I think that yes, education and of people, young people in particular, about healthy diets and all of that is definitely a must. But I think that, and I will use the example because as you introduced me, I spent many years in the Canadian public service as a junior officer at the beginning to a very senior executive at the end. I worked for very many different departments, and one of them I worked for was Health Canada. And Health Canada had taken on various mandates to deal with the health of Canadians. One of its roles is to deal with the health of Canadians. So if you had a government department here that was actually geared to, whether it was within the THA or it was within the central government in Trinidad, was actually going to be focused on improving the health of Trinbagonians, I think that would be coming from the right place to start. There were things that Health Canada put in place. Everything from now Canada is a very regulated country, so the government regulates lots of things. One of the things it regulated was that no more could children have access in schools to soft drinks and junk food. That was seen to be a major problem in the development in children of a dependency on those kinds of things as they grew older. The second one was there was something that was developed that was called the Canada Food Guide. And the Canada Food Guide told parents and other members of the public how to create a healthy, balanced diet for your families. Again, something that the government took in under its responsibility, but then sent it out through a number of campaigns all across Canada, telling people this is how you create a balanced meal in a week for your family. There were also tons of ad campaigns about, that went on television, that went all over the place, that basically said, once again, you need to be healthy. Here's how you focus on being healthy, and gave a bunch of different ways, whether it was cartoon type characters or whether it was more serious, doctors who were speaking to the public. But it was another way to reach the public. My background is communications. There are tons of communications vehicles to reach a public, to tell them about how to eat better, how to take care of themselves better, and whatnot. There was one of the other comorbidity that has been a major feature of the COVID deaths is obesity. And as we well know, there is an obesity issue in Tobago. And so if folks are told how to eat better, how to start that when they're younger, how to stay out of Church's Chicken and Kentucky Fried Chicken and every other kind of fried chicken place, how to understand that these foods become addictive and they become dependent on them in the same way as they would cigarettes, that they become dependent on the on the salt fat combination, then they might begin to start to realize that this is an issue. Now, of course, the government's not going to want to go after private sector organizations by saying your chicken is a bunch of garbage. But there could be ways that they could get that message across, that it is junk food and it should not make up a big part of your diet. And finally, there were campaigns about exercise, and there were campaigns called Participation, where it challenged individuals within the country to do little bits of exercise on a week. You could start by walking, and then you could go into you could increase the number of blocks you walk, and then so that if you were challenged to do that, you could have very small goals, and then potentially one day you might even be able to run. It was extremely successful. So I know that there could be things that could be done if the right government impetus was there to make it happen.
Thank you so much, Ms. John. I saw a question from Mrs. Miggins, but I think that between Ms. John and Mr. Ofori-Atta, they may have answered it. The question was, at this stage, would a strong campaign for the island and residents go on a heavy regime of vitamin D or the zinc components Mr. Ofori-Atta advocates be of any help, or is it too late? In other words, can the situation be retrieved in any way? And I do feel that Ms. John showed that the situation could possibly be retrieved if our health division and even ministry probably went on a strong campaign to do so. And Mr. Atta also highlighted that he has been able to reduce and even reverse some of these comorbidities and lifestyle diseases with a focused intensive program. So I do think that that question has been answered. Just wanted to remind everyone that this is an open town hall meeting with a panel of experts and social groups. Everyone is invited to join the virtual call. Gentle reminder that the Tobago CivilNet is a non-partisan group of Tobago civil society organizations and concerned citizens, all combining forces for the purpose of having collective input on Tobago development. Tobago CivilNet extends an invitation to all persons and organizations interested in lending their voices to these discussions. Please feel free to follow Tobago CivilNet on Facebook and join this certainly rousing discussion. I did see another question. Do you think that if pharmaceutical companies were restricted from profiting on vaccines during a pandemic, could that add to increased vaccine confidence? And this one, I'd like to include Mrs. Sterling Lewis on first, and then Dr. Max, I'd love to hear your thoughts, but just want to remind you that we only have about 15 minutes left. So please, if you could limit your answer to 3 minutes each, that would be appreciated. Mrs. Sterling Lewis, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm not so much the authority on this, but here's what I'll say. Heru already spoke to that. I just need to get this pronunciation correct. But we know that the issue, well, pharmaceutical companies are the one making the pharmaceuticals. That's just, so they have to profit. It is not so much the pharmaceuticals, but it's the research that has been going on that has been confusing the persons. And as one who is trained in psychology and research, it is definitely something that we always look at. So from the beginning, I've told people this, we have to look at who funds the research, because that plays a major part in many instances on what is released. We know that happened with Coca-Cola. When they started out way back making Coca-Cola, they put all the crap in it, and then they said, oh, well, they're having a low, they just drink Coca-Cola. Then they had to pull that back and realize Coca-Cola was killing people. We have seen this in many other instances. It's not anything new. So I cannot say that they could necessarily pull them from profiting, but they could be stricter, and I guess they have it, but they don't adhere, but stricter transparency rules when it comes to the research and what is put out there. Tobacco has shown that as well. Now you have to have about 70% of your tobacco package having all the death signs, but people still smoke. You know, so the point I'm getting at the end of the day is that people still will have to battle their own thoughts and ideas about what information is put out there. But we must, as the person is asking, I guess I can say that we must, as a world, be more person-minded and make sure we give persons good information so they can make good informed decisions. All right, but the pharmaceutical companies have to profit because they're making it, you know, but it's really the information that comes with the research and the transmitting of the information that creates a lot of the problems.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Sterling Lewis. Dr. Max.
With regard to the pharmaceutical companies, there's a lot of mistrust, you know, out there, which would have been created by past experiences. And I use that very, you know, carefully. Some people who were aware of what happened with syphilis in the, you know, in those days, you know, and what transpired and how things happened. Some of them, people still have some bitter experiences and memories of it. And therefore, it was difficult to really get over some of the suspicions and the misgivings that we have, right? And we have to validate people's fear, and we need to be fair to people when they make certain arguments based on the experience that maybe they or their relative or people they know will have suffered. That created some problem, okay? We knew that there have been some faux pas and some, even sometimes unethical behavior, sometimes in the part of some pharmaceutical companies all across the globe. We know that. but we cannot throw away the baby and the bad water. Out of that also comes a lot of novel, beneficial, scientific, inventions that have saved a lot of lives. And therefore we need to balance that. Unfortunately, commerce and money dictates a lot of things in the pharmaceutical world and in the business world. And therefore, some of these things is business, and therefore some of these unethical practices may raise their ugly head in certain instances, and we cannot overlook that. But we cannot sit down and argue based on that, because we do have in any situation the good, the bad, okay? And we've got to have to see what is relevant and what is important and what is beneficial. Personally, if you talk about the pharmaceutical companies, I would have wanted a more robust guidelines and protocol for the operation where this kind of situation is concerned, and where a pandemic is concerned, they should have been more humanitarian in their approach and be able to make things a little more transparent, like somebody said, and free, okay? And because that was not the case, I mean, initially we had a lot of controversies about Bill Gates and about these pharmacies, and there were just too many, informations out there that tends to create some negative hype as to how things should have done. I believe maybe if there had been more tighter control, maybe that would have mitigated against the wholesale, message of misinformation and disinformation that created a lot of vaccine hesitancy. So if that had been managed properly, maybe the vaccine hesitancy wouldn't have been that bad, and the vaccine uptake would have been much better. So that's just my view where that is concerned. It's a lot of, volatile argument out there about, who did wrong, who to trust and who not to trust and stuff like that. But the distrust that people had some, merits in past experiences, and we cannot discount that, especially the Black people. We can't discount that. So, but we cannot sit down and argue that all night and ignore the benefit that science brings to us, because science had benefited and had made a lot of, improvement in human life. If I touch briefly on the question of the health situation in Tobago, a lot of the things that have been said there, Tobago is not lacking in guidelines and in protocols and in resources in terms of how to improve the health system and how to manage the preventative aspect of health and how to navigate primary health care. It's just a function of coordination and having possibly the right people in the right place and the right political will to make that coordination gel together and move forward in a dynamic and a more holistic way. We do have a lot of brilliant professionals on the island. We do have a lot of policies that have been developed by quite a lot of people on this island, okay? And it's not for lack of information or lack of resources. I think it's a function of coordination and implementation to move Tobago forward.
Dr. Max, I just wanted to allow Ms. John actually to touch in on this question as well, especially as a business owner who has a business that is largely public and, has the public spaces issue to contend with. So the question is coming in from Miss Karen. It's if vaccinated persons can still contract and therefore spread COVID in the same way that unvaccinated persons can, how can the safety of safe zones be guaranteed? Now, it is now 9:23. Ms. John, I'm going to ask you to give your take in 2 minutes so that we could start wrapping up.
Well, I guess I would start by saying that I'm not of the opinion that vaccinated people can spread COVID as in equal measure as unvaccinated people. I don't think that is supported in any way, shape, or form. So as I said at the beginning, a safe zone then allows people who are vaccinated to be among other unvaccinated people and feel safe that the likelihood of contracting COVID is low. I'll give you an example, like just recently, and I use my, I live here for the last 3 years, but I do still keep my fingers very much on the pulse of what's going on in Canada. Just recently, a whole bunch of NHL players. This is hockey season, you know, like our hockey's our big national sport. And hockey players on one of the teams, I think it was an American team. All the players are Canadian, but nobody knows that. They were all vaccinated, and yet there's been a real high instance of COVID on that team. And the doctors were the trainers and the doctors were all speculating last night on the news as to why that has happened within a group of people who were vaccinated. What they have come to the conclusion has occurred is that because they've been around such large groups of people, because they play and they move around in circles where they are among a lot of other people other than their own group of players, they have managed to contract it outside of the bubble that their NHL team is. So the same thing applies in my mind to a safe zone. So if my bar is a safe zone and most of the people who come here or the people that can come into the bar are vaccinated, the likelihood of them getting contracting COVID from each other is going to be low. But if that same group of people were then to go to a stadium or go to a place where the others are not vaccinated, their likelihood of contracting COVID would go up.
Okay. It is 9:25. I'm going to ask that each panelist give their 1 minute wrap up. Remember that we are speaking to the people of Tobago when it comes to navigating the pandemic. So if you could give your 1 minute take, that would be appreciated. Each panelist will get 1 minute. Mrs. Sterling Lewis, I'm going to start with you. 1 minute.
Yes, I think you have to have another program for mental health there because we have a lot to go into, but here's my minute. Listen, this pandemic has rocked us from the head to our feet, and mental health should not be ignored. It has been ignored in the past, and I think COVID has shown us that we cannot continue to ignore mental health. And I believe in the 9 basic needs of the body. I believe that it is not just medicating, because we have this argument about vaccines and stuff like that. Like I said before, the mental health industry has pushed antidepressants, anti-anxieties, as opposed to promoting wellness and prevention that comes to lifestyle. So I want to encourage persons out there to understand that you can prevent mental health challenges, or when you find yourself in a mental health crisis, because it happens to everybody, that there are things you can do at your home, self-help, through wellness techniques, through lifestyle techniques, and of course, if needs be, through pharmaceuticals to definitely help you.
Thank you, Mrs.
Yes, on time.
Mr. Ovori Atta, 1 minute to the people of Tobago.
Yes, I would ask everyone to research RNA polymerase, zinc ionophores, and the halting of viral replication. Anyone can look at primary source studies on that. Just go ahead and Google that, and the studies will come up from the United States National Institute of Health website. Again, I would also ask people to go to vigiaccess.org. That is the World Health Organization's website that tracks worldwide adverse events from all medicines. Type in COVID-19 vaccines and you will see that there are 2.2 million adverse events reported in just 2021. When you compare that to the polio vaccine and the MMR vaccine, the polio vaccine has 121,974 adverse events reported since 1968. The MMR vaccine for measles and mumps has 160,000 adverse events reported since 1975. So you see 2.2 million adverse events reports in less than 1 year for these COVID vaccines. Not all vaccines are created equal. People who want to get primary source information can contact me.
We have to give our panelists an opportunity to speak.
Yes.
Ms. John, could you please give us your hot take in 1 minute? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that what I would say to the people of Tobago is that we all are in the same boat where we would like to get back to a way of living that we recognize from before the pandemic. And so therefore we all want to go to the beach. We all want to try to, have a carnival. We all want to go to jazz. We all want to do the things that we were doing in the past, in the way that we were doing in the past. But it's going to take a while to get there. But I think that the message I'd like to send is that for folks to, I respect people's choices. They can be vaccinated or they can be unvaccinated. But what I would like them to do is to make sure that they're very accurately informed and they make very informed decisions from very good sound sources, and that they do what they feel they need to do as individuals to get back to that normalcy.
Dr. Max, 1 minute.
My take-home points would be to encourage everyone to, understand that we're in a pandemic and we're trying to get out of the pandemic. To get out of the pandemic, we've got to do certain things, and all the protocols that have been given to us, the hand washing, the face masking, the social distancing, the boosting of your immune system, and the vaccination. They are all layers of, protections, and each one of them has its role to play, and they are all important, and we should endeavor to adhere to them. And the closer and the more we adhere to them, and the better we are, and the quicker that we may be able to get out of the lockdowns and the pandemics and whatever is going on, because everybody seems frustrated, and it's even myself, I'm frustrated being in one space for 2 years, and it's nothing that I've experienced for about like 2 to 20 years, so just being in one spot, unable to go here or there, and it's frustrating for everyone. So therefore, to come out of the frustration, we need to do the needful so that all of us can come out of this.
Thank you, Dr. Max. In wrapping up, CivilNet would like to thank you for joining us for this town hall meeting this Sunday, November 7th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Do not miss Conversations with the Candidates. The topic is, are we miseducating the Tobagonian? Right here on Tobago CivilNet Facebook and Tobago Channel 5. This is Devonne Adanna. I thank you so much for joining us.